Thank you, Claire. Thank you for that introduction. First of all, I wanted to congratulate Grant on the work that's been done here so far to move Saskatchewan forward. I do a lot of these events when communities are at the early stage of thinking about where they want to go next, and you guys have really, by virtue of this event, shown your willingness to collaborate and to move into the future. So I really congratulate you on that, because the work is not easy, especially in a place that is not apparently in any kind of danger of falling apart, like my hometown. So congratulations on that. I also wanted to congratulate the Ignite speakers who are in front of me here, because again, I'm rather intimidated both by their level of knowledge and the fact that I'm a New Yorker and they actually speak faster than me. So I'm going to try to get through my slides in 15 seconds apiece if I can. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is really something that will take us, I think, 30,000 feet up, if you will, from the things that we've been listening to over the last day and a half. I wanted to see if I could put together a lot of the ideas that you've heard here and put them within a global context. And what I'm going to be speaking about are the rise of the intelligent community movement, and to, most importantly, let you know that you're not alone here in your work. As Claire said, our job at the Intelligent Community Forum is to energize communities for the 21st century. We believe that some things will always remain the same. There are probably two quotes from two famous men that I think attribute themselves to this. The first one, of course, is from a great Canadian, and I couldn't come to Canada and not quote a hockey player. But the great Gretzky said, "A good player skates to where the puck is. A great hockey player skates to where the puck is going to be." And for me, that is what communities that are great are doing in terms of anticipating their vision. The second quote comes from another famous man who probably none of you know. His name is Salvatore Colatarci. And I know not many of you speak Italian here, but that quote below the slide is from him. And he said very simply, every night when he came home from work, worked on the railroad, worked very hard, raised 11 kids in a small town, and you know, they never went without anything. And he just loved his home, never wanted to leave it. And he'd come home every night and he'd sit down, you know, and get a glass of wine. His grandchildren, his kids would be around him, and he'd say, "Non c'è posto migliore pia della mia casa." Any of you know Italian? You're shaking your head. You probably do, but you're being polite. What it means very simply is there's no place like home. That's the fundamental proposition of the Intelligent Community Forum. We believe there is no place like home, but what has changed is that home has changed in terms of its ability to sustain those of us who want to stay in our places and prosper. We have seen in the industrial and post-industrial age a significant shift, and we have seen conditions that have never presented themselves in human history, some good and some bad, and I will talk about them. But that's what we're going to talk about today, because Saskatchewan is right in the middle of that. What we try to do at the ICF, and by the way, I did not want to create a global movement or a think tank in New York or a foundation or institutes which I have around the world. All I really wanted to do was to find out what happened to my hometown, as Claire said. But guess what? There were millions of other people out there, including presidents of countries and leaders, who were asking the same question. So what we try to do is to study the economic and social development of the 21st century community at that level. I believe very strongly, as many of you have told me today and have reinforced it, that what is going to happen to change the world is going to happen from the bottom up. And you can see it with the things we're talking about in terms of crowdsourcing and some of the activities that are available through the web. We build ourselves from our tribes. We build ourselves from our communities. So we're studying that right now. We want to share the best practices of the world's best communities to accelerate the development of all of them. So what we do is we take the work and the stories and the information from the great communities, the communities that have turned it around, and we tell anybody who wants to know how they did it. We share that information, and we don't charge people to access that information. The third thing I wanted to do, and this is very exciting to me because you are a part of it, we want to enable a sustained global dialogue with the world's thought leaders. We want this conversation to roll continuously around the world so that people will continue to develop their communities. So that's our mission. Now, people ask me, you know, Lou, you're a successful businessman and you live in New York and you got a great life. Why worry about this? Why do we need intelligent communities? Why? I think the why part is easy, and again, I'm going to talk on a global basis today. I come out of the satellite industry. That's my favorite telecommunications industry. But look at this. This is a satellite photograph that's taken of the Korean Peninsula at 8 o'clock last night. You look below the 38th parallel. What do you see? You see light. You see life. You see the great cities of Seoul and Suwon, one of our intelligent communities of the year in 2010. You see Busan, bright, prosperous, using their culture to enhance the lives of Korea as it moves into the 21st century. That's activity. That's moving toward the light. Look 16 miles north of Seoul. In the middle of the night, what do you see? You see a closed society. You see darkness. You see a place moving further and further and further into darkness. That little spot of bright light, somebody said, is someone from Quebec who got lost. But in my view, this is symbolic, but that's what's at stake. In the 21st century, communities are going to either move toward the light or they are going to persist in darkness. And there are consequences for those things. And every community is struggling with that right now at some level. I mean, it's a simple analogy, but that really, at the essence of our work, that's what I'm seeing. Here are some other factors to consider when you consider Saskatchewan's future. The crowd. As of today, 52% of the world's population lives in cities. First time in human history, by the way, that we have more people living in cities than in rural countrysides or small towns. By 2050, that figure is going to be 70%. That's unsustainable. That's placing demands on the current capabilities of most cities, most urban centers. You know, I sit down with people in China, I'm going there in May, and they tell me, we can't sustain 33 people in Shanghai. You know, there isn't enough Chinese food to deliver to 33 million people. We just can't do it. So China, being China, they're forcing people back into the countryside. Canada's not going to do that. Canada doesn't need to do that. But this is what's happening in the urban environments where a lot of people are running to. I think there's going to be problems. There are already consequences when people leave their hometowns. You have vanishing hometowns. You have places where people have lived for generations that are now bereft of the people to support the next generation. You lose cultural heritage. You lose language. You lose all kinds of assets that have economic and social consequence. It is a disaster in some parts of the world. It was a disaster in upstate New York for me when I had to leave my hometown. You have brain drain. You have the best and the brightest leaving places and taking their talents and taking their brain someplace else. And you have very, very shaken community survivors. You have people who still live in these places and love them, but they're just barely surviving. So that's what's at stake today in the world's communities. That's the point at which we've arrived. And of course, we believe that, as physicists tell us, we need to tap into the intelligence of the world. You know, physicists are telling us today that when it comes to particle matter, the Earth has intelligence. Every fiber, every being of the Earth has intelligence. Communities are the same way, in my view. They all have their own intelligence. See, you're part of a community. You have intelligence that you can put together and mine. Okay, so here's some good news if you're Saskatchewan, if you aren't a big city, I believe. The good news is this. You can be the city of the future. I think the no-name cities are going to be the cities that everybody points to in 2050. I just told the World Wealth Report that, and they published it out of England. I said the 3 cities that you never heard of will probably be the leading cities in 2050. Eindhoven, Holland, Suwon, South Korea, and Waterloo, Ontario. I said these are going to be the places that are going to be the dominant centers. These are going to be the places that people want to live. Why? And how can it happen here? How can you be the 4th city that people want to live in 2050? You're going to take advantage of a unique moment in human history. Okay? Now, a lot of people will tell you that what they're doing is unique in human history. Most of the time they're wrong. But this is unique. We've asked everybody. We've asked anthropologists, we've asked historians, we've asked people who study this stuff. I've asked authorities like my mother. And she knows everything. And they all say the same thing. For the first time in human history, so far as we know, 2 conditions exist that have never existed before. The first is that people can live anywhere they want. They can stay home. The second condition is they can stay home and be part of a global economy. Okay? Stay home, be part of a global economy. The thing that you need in order to make that happen and to make it sustainable, viable, fruitful for you as a human being and for your families is that you need a connection. You need digital access technology to connect you. You need broadband. We say it simply. But it's access technology. If you have that, then the railroad, the new railroad, runs through your town. And you can sit there in your underwear and make millions of dollars. I call it pajama and underwear capitalism. People can stay home, sit in their homes, and participate in a global economy. It's fantastic. But you have to figure out strategically how you want to get there, how you want to build that new railroad, right? Because in the broadband economy, digital technologies like the ones we've been talking about brilliantly over the last day and a half, they are the new railroad. If you think of the proposition of the railroad, it was very simple, right? If the railroad ran through your town, you could put cargo on it, whatever it was, you know, mining products, forestry products, coal, take it to the next province, take it to the rest of North America, trade, and do business. And that currency would come back into your town. Your businesses would thrive. The hotel I'm staying in was built by a railroad company. They had that much wealth. Broadband and access technologies that you now have available here in Regina are the same thing, except the cargo is weightless. I mean, you still have, of course, you know, tremendous natural resources here that you're going to leverage over the next few years as you experience a boom. But equally important is the knowledge cargo that you can put not just on a train going to the next province, but around the world. And I think that's where the opportunity is. So if you can balance those things, wow, what a future here. I call it, you know, I like to call it the age of light, right? I'm an old-fashioned kind of Italian guy. I like art. I like all that, those big images. But I think it is the age of light. We can choose now to go toward the light with our economies and our communities. Here are some of the dynamics, and these are things that I think you need to remember, again, as you figure out what your problems are, how you want to solve them, and then what kind of future you want. For economic purposes, the people here live right next door to the people of Waterloo, Eindhoven, Suwon, Hong Kong, you name a city. You've got to watch the brain drain. You can't keep losing your best and brightest, even though you're producing jobs in certain sectors. You want to keep the intellectual talent here. There are ways to do that. You've got to watch investment shifting, because today, interestingly enough, investment is going toward places that have quality of life. Quality of life is capital today. So if you have a good arts community, if you have things that allow people in the class that we're talking about to stay in a place or to be attracted to a place, they'll go anywhere. Why? Because we're in that unique moment in human history. People can live anywhere they want, and they will stay in places that offer them a quality of life. So quality of life has economic consequence, right? The nation of Bhutan doesn't measure gross domestic product anymore. They measure gross domestic happiness, because they know that when people feel good about where they are, they produce more economically. They produce more social capital. Disintermediation is a dynamic of this new economy. It shortens product life cycles, disrupts social continuity, and puts a premium on innovation. Ushihide just gave you an example of how that can take place, how you can disintermediate traditional forms of assessment and data and basically go into a marketplace and let people know what the price is or what the problem is right away. Multiply that by what you can do to a company like Microsoft. You can disintermediate these places with 1 or 2 people. That's a fascinating thing, and they can do it right from here. And increasingly, local economic success is increasingly dependent on how you plug into that global economy. And again, there are all kinds of opportunities in a community that has natural resources to leverage that and to layer information technology on top of it and to create intellectual and weightless cargo type products that can go to market quickly and leverage all of those other strengths. Okay, I think there's something, I'm writing a book about this, so I'm pre-selling it for you. I think there's something going on. With all due respect to Anish Chopra, my friend, and I think President Obama's done a fantastic job in the United States as an American. Henry Kissinger said something a year ago in New York where I was, and he said, the nation state is losing its significance. And I thought about that, and I've been talking to people about that, and what I think is happening is this, that as national governments sort of don't work as well as they used to, I think people are going to do what people have always done. They're going to go back to their tribe. They're going to go back to the thing you can always rely on when things get bad, your own, right? So you'll fall back on your cities and your communities and your ethnic cultures or people who think like you. And that's what we're seeing today as well. The difference is the tribes are global. They're enlightened tribes. They're people who think alike even though they may be based in Waterloo or Regina or Suwon. They're brothers. They can think about that. But also in local communities. People are saying, okay, let's see what we can do here to build ourselves up. In Taiwan, you've got intelligent communities now, and the ideas have percolated up so far that the president of Taiwan, our friend Mr. Ma, has said we're going to have a mandate nationally to make Taiwan an intelligent island. But one visual example of this is right up there on the screen. I was also in Egypt, in Cairo. I was in the second revolution, the one last November when it blew up again. I drove into Tahrir Square on November 21st. And what was really interesting was that picture that was taken from Tahrir Square. To me, it summarizes everything that Grant is trying to do here and that you are trying to do. It tells you the importance of these technologies and what it means to a community's future. Cairo is fighting for its life. It is in the ultimate struggle between darkness and light. It will either enter the 21st century kicking and screaming, or it will enter it via the 12th century. And if it enters it via the 12th century, it's a disaster. And you can see exactly where they think the community is headed and what their community is. And they're saying exactly this to the government. If the government can't give us what we want in our communities, we'll find another community. And Facebook is the 4th largest nation on earth, as the famous statistic goes. So it's been very interesting to see tribalism sort of reappear. And as I say, you can enter the 21st century one of 3 ways. Kicking and screaming. You can be in a lot of pain and then have to have a conference like this to survive. You can take the 12th century, you can start thinking like they did 100 years ago and think that it was better in the old days. It wasn't. People died when they were 39 years old. They didn't have good hockey teams. The New York Yankees didn't exist. How good could it have been? Or you can become a Louis community. And my name's Lou Zacharilla, but I'm not talking about me. I'm going to go way back now in terms of music history. I'm talking about Louis Armstrong. Anybody know who Louis Armstrong was? Raise your hand. Wow. You people are either really old or you're really sophisticated when it comes to jazz. But here's a great story about Armstrong, and I think it's the lesson for the community like yours that's thinking this through and how you have to anticipate ideas and how you have to build them. Armstrong's in a recording studio in 1924 in Chicago. He's got that trumpet near him. He's singing a brand new song called I Got the Heebie-Jeebies. right? And he's got a sheet of music in front of him with the words on it, on a podium like this. They're recording it. Now in those days you didn't have digital recording, right? So you ran the tape and that was it. You know, that was the track. The music falls on the floor. So the breeze comes through the room, the music falls on the floor. Armstrong, instead of panicking, looks at his producer. His producer goes, keep playing. We don't have the money to stop this thing and start again. So Armstrong just doesn't know the words. He just starts miming nonsense words and syllables and consonants. And he starts just moving it around. The album comes out, the song comes out 2 weeks later. Kids in Chicago, young African-American kids, young white kids, they're all doing this thing that Louis Armstrong did in that song. Guess what it was called? Scat. The guy invented a whole new musical genre that, of course, as we know, was perfected later by great artists like Ella Fitzgerald. What's the point there? The point is that Louis didn't fear change. He creatively took advantage, and he set his mastery aside and entered into a mystery about what was happening next and created something new. I have to tell you, that's what great communities are doing today. They're thinking creatively, they are being open to any idea that comes to them, and of course they're using data, reams of it, to assess themselves, and then they're putting it back into the intelligence of the tribe. And it's very exciting. Now, people ask, how do you become an intelligent community? How do you start going down the path of thinking where Saskatchewan's communities are going to need to be? We have 5 indicators that we use for our international awards program. Every year we evaluate 400 communities for our Intelligent Community of the Year program. First one, as we've talked about, is broadband or access technologies. You have to have the train. You got to have the railroad. Second one is a knowledge workforce. Do you have an educated workforce that's using knowledge to create the kind of wealth that's going to be necessary in the future? So again, as you go through this process here, these are 5 things that you can be looking at. The third one is innovation. Are you innovative? Are you Louis-type people? Are you looking differently at things? Or even more importantly here, frankly, I think there are things going on right now in your agricultural sector, in other sectors, that are changing the way things are done, but I'm not sure you're identifying it. I've been talking to people over the last couple of days. I think there's a lot of innovation going on here right now that you're not capturing, because you're really smart people. There's also innovation in government. We look for government to be more responsive to its citizens, and again, we've talked about that a lot over the last couple of days. Fourth one is digital inclusion. Are we bringing everybody along on this ride? I don't care what faith or what you believe in. We have a moral mandate this time because of what we have and what we've been given to bring everybody along in our communities. And I think there's economic consequence if you do it the right way. Elderly people have the ability to mentor others and to bring them ideas and to share experiences that can lead into new businesses, new ways of creating services. 3 of my leading people at the Intelligent Community Forum are retired executives from IBM, Verizon, and other companies that their companies decided they didn't need anymore. They're in their 70s, and who come to me for nothing and create so much value it will blow you away, and they become teachers to me. So digital inclusion is important, and you can harness technology to it. And the 5th thing is advocacy. How well do you tell your story? Well, this is advocacy, what Grant has done here with Sask 3.0. You are beginning to tell your story to each other, and you're hearing stories from other places around the world. That's important as you become a community, and the next step there would be to tell your story to the rest of the world when you get ready to go. We add another indicator each year, and I won't spend a lot of time there because I'm moving out of time. Let me just say this, though, that in terms of where an intelligent community can be, it can be any place where someone has a brain. And these are the communities that we've designated as intelligent throughout the world through our awards program. It's a simple proposition. My father, he was a man of few words, but he gave me the best advice anybody's ever given me. He said when I was a young man, he said, "Lou, always hang around with people who are more intelligent than you." He says, because you can't learn anything from stupid ones. And my mother said, oh, thank God. That means you can hang around with anybody. True story. I love her. I love her anyway. But intelligence is everywhere, as I've said. It is every place. So again, it doesn't matter where you are. You can do this. I just want to give you a look at the communities that we've named as intelligent this year. And as you can see, there's a range from all around the world. And in terms of who you might want to emulate or whose story you might want to hear about, again, at the ICF, we're very welcome to share all of these stories with you, because that's really what we are. We're global storytellers around a digital fireplace. But Oulu, Finland is kind of interesting because they're the gateway to the Arctic Circle. Like you, they have a great deal of natural resource that they excavate and use. But they've also managed to create a wealth of information technology-based companies. Nokia is headquartered there very famously. Importantly, they have used digital technology. For example, in their university, they have a center for the study of internet behavior. And they study internet behavior in their own community and other places to get a sense of the types of services and products that will create new streams and new forms of business as well. So again, this is a community that wasn't really threatened. I mean, they were losing some jobs and people, but decided to balance their economy. And I think it's a good story, but there are 20 other great stories here as well. Okay, I saw somebody quote Winston Churchill. I always like to quote him. But in 1943, he said something that is clearly true today, that the empires of the future will be the empires of the mind. Ronald Reagan said in 1983 in Moscow University, the era of brawn over brain is over. Get with the program. This is the way the train is headed. Peter Drucker said 75 years ago, by the end of the century, no one will be able to make a consistent living or entry into the middle class just by working with their muscle. Intelligence is going to be required in our workforce. So you can build empires in Saskatchewan, but you have to build an ecosystem. The great advances are made not by individuals, although you need leaders, and I think you found a few, but by environments. It's really not a coincidence that innovations tend to come in bundles. Waterloo, Ontario is a classic example. I like Waterloo very much. Here's a community of 115,000 people in Canada that produces 10% of all the publicly traded companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange. That's not an accident. The city leadership and the province and the people there work on this. The university works on this. They work together with the local government and the private sector, companies like Research in Motion and OpenText and Sybase. And then what do? They say, we're going to continue to build our ecosystem. That thing on the right is a place called the Perimeter Institute, where the founders of Research in Motion put in $150 million, I think, and built a place where 50 of the world's quantum physicists come and do pure research in quantum physics. Now you say to yourself, would the people of Waterloo really care about that? The people of Waterloo? Well, they have a theater there that holds about 350 people, and they have lectures on, really exciting topics like dark matter and string theory. I mean, they're exciting to me, but you would think, to plumbers and people like that, who cares? We're too busy. They fill that place. They're proud of what they've accomplished there. See, they're a community that's embraced their intelligence, and they're defining themselves by the new things that they're doing, and they're trying to give themselves an identity, even though there's only 115,000 people there. And again, I can multiply this, but I wanted to use a Canadian example. Unfortunately, I know there's an east-west thing here. They're in the east, but they're okay. They're okay. Okay. The last thought I'm going to leave you with is what I think is important is the next phase of mining here, the mining of your culture. I mentioned to you what the World Wealth Report said about the cities of 2050, the most important cities of 2050. They will be the no-name cities. They will not be the cities that everybody thinks of today, because places will disperse their ability to produce the knowledge and the density required to propel economic output in the 21st century. You can mine your culture by doing something the Dutch call the triple helix. Create a new DNA for yourself while you're thriving over the next couple of years. The triple helix means that you get your academic sector, your political sector, and your private sector collaborating all the time on a regular basis to figure out what you can do next to unleash the intelligence that's here, and then harness it to the digital age, to the digital techniques that we've been talking about over the last couple of days. Create a new DNA for yourself. That DNA will be vibrant. The triple helix. Creativity is a core competency. Creativity is not confined anymore to crazy artists in a studio. IBM did a study about 2 years ago, and they asked their senior managers what would be the most important core competency for IBM executives over the next couple of years, or for your executives over the next couple of years. And the #1 competency that these 1,500 CEOs chose was creativity. They said the ability to problem solve, the ability to develop new ideas, to be innovative, is the competency that we're looking for. In other words, we are going to hire managers who are going to redefine their jobs and end the jobs they have within the next 18 months, because that's what companies are going to require. The other thing that I'm finding that's really, I think, pleasing to me, if you will, and I saw this in a lot of places this year, is a true growth strategy. In other words, grow your own, be homegrown. I've heard a couple of things here. A couple of people have said, well, because you're trying to figure out what you want to do as the next phase. People have said, well, let's be the next Silicon Valley. You don't want to be the next Silicon Valley. Believe me, you don't want to be anything like California. They're nuts down there. You guys are sane, No, you don't want to be Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley didn't even want to be Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was based on some real estate plays balanced against some family feuds at Hewlett-Packard, largely. I mean, as I understand the story. No, you want to grow something that's been here for a long time. You have agriculture. You have, as Joan said so eloquently, you have persistence. You have stubbornness. You have the ability to stay the course, You have your quiet dignity that you just know how to push forward and use. And Canadians are terrific at collaboration. I think Canada is going to be the country of the future because it collaborates, because it understands the importance of balancing the environment. It has so many virtues, but true growth means taking what you have, taking what you're good at, taking what God has given you here over the last 500 years or whatever, using your indigenous people as part of the dialogue, and growing something new that's going to have tremendous economic and social power. And when you do that, then the rest of the world's going to come, and you won't have to beg them. And just connect it to the new railroad. You've got a lot of people here who have been talking about how to do that. From David to Anish to Nick, all the expertise is there. The question now is, what do you do with that canvas that's in front of you? So think like Louis, and don't be afraid to screw up. I know you tend to be a little conservative. Most people are. Most people resist change. Screwing up is a virtue. Being correct is never the point. Being right can stop the momentum of a very interesting idea. Create a forum for yourself. Use Sask 3.0 as an ongoing mechanism to put every idea you can on the board here and see which ones relate to the true growth strategy, the truth of this community. Education. Think differently about education. We just opened an institute in Ohio on the campus of a university. And the goal of the Institute of the Intelligent Community Forum is to study communities as it relates to creating a knowledge workforce. But what I said to the president was, the one thing I want to start with is I want to learn how to demolish the educational system of North America. Are you with me? I said, this guy's going to throw me out here in my ear. He said, yeah. Yeah, we got to figure out how to educate ourselves differently. Time shift our education so that it looks a lot different than it does today, because it's not working. Like the nation state, there's problems with it. So Chesterton said a long time ago, the chief object of education is not to learn, but to unlearn. And I think, believe it or not, that's how you get started. And the unlearned know a lot of things. They know that small and mid-sized companies have global trade opportunities never before available to them. They know that innovation is as important as location. I never want to hear a kid come up to me again in 20 years. This is why I do this, why I spend my own money to do it, so I go all around the world. I never want to hear a young person in a town like this or any other part of the world, when I ask them where they live, come up to me and say, I live in the middle of nowhere. I could cry just thinking about that. That's an awful thing. There is no middle of nowhere. With our technology today, the middle of nowhere is no more. I'm declaring that here. Is the newspaper around? That's your headline. There is no middle of nowhere. That's nonsense. These are homes. These are places that people have invested in for centuries. These are great places. No middle of nowhere. And today's students go global and nonlinear in search of education. We know that. We've heard about that. And again, I go back to this. Collaboration. Collaboration is as good as sex. As a matter of fact, you can't have sex without collaboration. Well, you can, but it's not very satisfying. And I go back to the triple helix there. Here's a community, and I encourage you to study them at our website, intelligentcommunity.org. Eindhoven, the Intelligent Community of the Year last year. They have gotten 23 communities together to form an organization called Brainport. And what they have managed to do in the area of industrial design is to take on the Chinese through an enormous amount of collaboration and creativity. And if you look at the things that I don't have time to tell this story, but if you look at the things that Eindhoven is doing, you will be literally blown away. Collaboration is a good thing. And I encourage any of you who want to come to New York to meet them. Their mayor and their leadership will be here on June 7th to let me know. I will admit you into my summit because you participated here at no cost, no registration fee. Just let Grant know, and we'll make sure that if you make your way to New York, you'll enjoy a dialogue with some of the world's most creative communities. So everyday Louis do it every day. There are a lot of examples here. I don't have time to go into them. But EC, Les Molyneux, and Taiwan are important to understand because they found a champion. Political leadership is important, but if you can't find political leadership, they'll eventually follow a leader in a community or a community that's leading. So, you know, as the Buddha said, be a light unto yourself. That light will shine, and the rest of the world will follow. The rest of the province will follow. Eindhoven and Stratford, we've talked about. Stockholm is interesting because everything they do in their 2030 strategic plan says, how does this impact the human being first? How can we unleash the human potential of Stockholmers? I don't have time to tell you the Justin Bieber story, but he's from one of our intelligent communities also out east in this country. But Justin Bieber is from Stratford, Ontario. His Twitter traffic, which actually took down our website one day because he was congratulating Stratford for being an intelligent community, controls 4% of the internet. I mean, it's a fantastic story about how you use technology to both build a career, promote a town, and to communicate. Okay, in closing, I encourage you to meet the world's top 7 intelligent communities, the Louis communities in New York, June 7th. You can go to our website, use that guest code, and extend this dialogue. And perhaps what you learn there, you can bring back here, because I suspect that this dialogue is going to continue for a long time until this community continues to move further and further into the light. So you'll meet some really interesting thought leaders. And I know that you have an unknown future sometimes. People feel that way. But, you know, having spent 48 short hours here, I can see that the path to the light is very bright. And don't ever underestimate the power of an idea. If anybody had told me 10 years ago that I'd be standing here talking to a group of really smart people in a place that I couldn't even pronounce 10 years ago, but I'm here. If anybody had told me that I'd have a movement that's gone global and that we've been able to do the things we do and to create jobs and build communities for the 21st century, I'd have said they were crazy. But ideas and technology, when they're married together, are powerful. So you're powerful too. Thank you for having me here, and God bless you the rest of the way.